Good afternoon, Georgia. Today we've got another very special guest. I'm very, very pleased to have this lady with me. She is Battle Time. She's the boss lady at Kelly Dunbar Dog Training. I like that title. She's the COO and Educational Director and Training at Serious Puppy Dog Training, and she's the founder and president at Open Paw. Kelly, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to speak with you today.
Uh,
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, we haven't spoken for a while, so anything new happening that I don't know of?
Oh, I don't know. Just the usual adventures. There are some new projects in the works, but it's too early to even talk about them. So, I'm just out there training dogs and teaching people. And I do have a new foster coming today.
Oh, good.
And he is, I always encourage people, especially aspiring dog trainers or just any dog trainer, um, to foster. It's a great way to serve your community and keep a healthy way to rescue. I think it's better to be in a home than it is to be in even the best of shelters, and it's a great way to continue to not only share your craft and give back to the dogs and your community, but also to hone your skills.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Always, you get a different dog every time, and everybody teaches you something. This particular one that's coming today is a 7-month-old working line Malinois, Belgian Malinois, who has fallen on hard times, and so many of them unfortunately do these days.
Yes.
At 7 months, he's already lost a back leg
A shame.
and his home. So he's got a great spirit. And so that's, I guess, the newest thing that's happening here.
But that's brilliant. That's good. Oh, yeah, and you lost one of yours a week or so ago, so really sorry about
I
that. That's
did.
so sad.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Kelly, I have a question.
Okay.
I want to pick your
Shoot.
brain. Okay.
Okay.
A while ago, one of our shelters asked me to help them with their dogs to make them just more adoptable and more presentable and so forth. So I immediately had this vision in my head. Okay, my head is full of visions, but this one, I was okay. If you go into the shelters, there's always barking and dogs jumping up, and it's noisy. And when they want to take the dogs out on their leashes, it's pulling and barking and lunging and jumping and all the rest of it. So I had this vision of walking into a shelter and the dogs really walking towards the fence or whatever the shelter has, and then sit politely, and you can give them food and they will take politely. They will not bark. If somebody wants to take them to a playpen on leash, they will accept the leash. You don't have to force them to get the leash on, and they will walk politely without jumping, without lunging, without barking. That's the vision I had. So I went with this vision to the shelter, and in my mind, when I train dogs, it takes time. It takes quite a lot of time. So with each and everything I suggested is just was the answer. We don't have time. So with Open Paw, how did you cross that bridge? I'm sure you had the same issue.
Training does take time. Good, solid training of foundations and building new habits absolutely is, it takes time to build a habit. We know that. We know that if we want to build muscle memory and strength, that we have to have a program, of conditioning that
Yeah.
takes months. Same for losing weight, same for stopping a bad habit, whether it's biting your nails or smoking or eating chocolate. That's not really a bad habit, is it? Well, it could be. You have to make incremental changes over time, and you have to choose again and again, and until this, again, it becomes muscle memory and habit. So that doesn't happen overnight. And when you're in a shelter, you're also, not only are you dealing with the traditional issues of training isn't magic and doesn't happen overnight, but now you've got really usually dogs that are in high arousal or stress, even in the best shelter, that are surrounded by distractions, all day long, and that's not the ideal training scenario. You don't
Yeah,
like to start a new behavior or project when there's it's a three-ring circus around you.
exactly.
Not to mention these dogs aren't necessarily bonded with the person who's working with them yet. Sometimes if you've got great staff and volunteers, or if the dog's been there for a while, of course they bond.
Yeah.
But initially, when they come in presenting with the problems that got them there, let's be real, if dogs don't fit nicely and neatly into the human world with their habits and activities, they're going to end up abandoned in a lot of cases, one way or another. So the dogs that come into the shelter often already have, I won't say bad habits, but undesirable to humans.
Yeah.
They're just being dogs and haven't been given the guidance and training that they need. Hence, this is why they're there. So the whole point of Open Paw was to address all of that, and to do it in a way that was efficient and friendly and really accessible to anybody who comes into the shelter. Because one person, George, you can be a brilliant trainer, I can be a brilliant trainer, and we can work so hard in a shelter every day. And even if we have a staff of training department staff,
Yeah.
and maybe there's 10 people working just specifically on that, and they can all be brilliant, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to what these animals need on a daily basis to retain or learn the behaviors that they need under these circumstances. So we came up with the idea of everybody training that comes into the shelter. So every single person, every interaction is a learning opportunity, whether we like it or not. They're learning something. The dogs are gathering information and cataloging that in their head, and their behavior will be based on the information that they've gathered. So time is a problem. However, if you've got everybody on board with the same program, and it doesn't have to be even extensive, just even if it's the top 3 things that you want every dog, can't do 3 things you want every dog to learn. Sit when somebody approaches, sit and be quiet, not to jump up, to sit when a leash is presented, to sit when a door is opened,
Yeah.
to show, even that, just literally just sit in different contexts alone would change their lives.
Yeah.
So anybody can do that. They don't have to be super skilled. They don't have to even touch the dog, even go in the kennel to do so. So this is how we get the efficiency. We have everybody on the same page, every interaction building and adding to the right behavior bank, if you will. And that expedites the work. Now, on the other side of that coin, the other way to steal time, if you will, to find the time, because shelters are busy, and I understand that. Like, the staff is usually overwhelmed, emotionally and just physically, right?
Yeah.
With the daily tasks, and it's always a game of catch up and triage, because I know I've worked in shelters, so to think, oh my gosh, you're going to add something to my day, I don't have time to wait for this dog to sit. But going back to the first thing, if everybody's doing the same thing, yes, the first few times you have to wait for a sit, let's say, if you're going to shape it. You could lure it too in some cases, but if you're going to shape a sit, you have to wait. But the thing is, if this happens literally 15, 20 times a day, by day 2, they're doing it. And now it doesn't take a long time. Also, it's not about adding work to the shelter's staff and volunteers' daily tasks. It's more about just shifting what they are. So for instance, the ways to find time are to this sounds crazy because first of all, we walk the dogs so that they learn to toilet outside, so they're not cleaning kennels all day. Because honestly, everywhere I go, and I have been literally all over the globe with Open Paw, every shelter I go, inordinate amount of time just cleaning. And they're doing like laboratory level scrub downs, sometimes twice a day, definitely once a day, and then cleaning messes all day long because the dogs aren't being let out. So they're learning to toilet and soil in their living space, which is absolutely what we
Yeah.
don't want them to do for a myriad of reasons, for lots of reasons. Um, and then you're just cleaning. Now you're just a janitor instead of like, you know, people come to the shelter and want to work there because they love animals. And now all they do is, you know, scrub up and clean up poop and pee and wipe it off the dogs that are finger painting and stuck in it because they have nowhere to go. So the number one thing you can do to help a dog in an animal shelter and then stay mentally healthy and adoptable, and also um, to help the staff have the wherewithal and time and energy and spirit to go on and do more, is to keep the kennels clean. And that is a toilet training program, meaning the dogs are walked or let out to a separate area on a regular schedule, at least 3, preferably 4 times a day. And this is aside from their, like maybe their training time or social time. Literally, they just know that they're going to get out to go potty, and they don't have to go in their area. And if you start that from the day that they arrive in the shelter, yes, even if they're quarantined or whatever it may be, obviously if they're in isolation, that's a slightly different story. We won't talk about that right now. Um, you know, but they need, you know, you first impressions matter. And if a dog is in quarantine for 3, 5, 6 days because they just came in and there's, you know, protocols around disease and they never get out to toilet, you're 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 imprisoning them
Yeah.
and then forcing them to soil. And then that sets up their mentality, it sets up their habits and everything. So a toilet training program does take time, but it also buys you hours. It buys you hours of the day, and then it keeps everybody happier and healthier, mentally healthier. So, um, you know, and if you have an army of people doing other chores, you know, then the trained staff or the you know, the paid staff, the insured staff, let's say, insured, you know, people that are can safely take out the dogs,
Yeah.
um, are the staff, are the real staff, and then the volunteers could be doing other things like stuffing Kongs or hand feeding, or you know, keeping dogs quiet in the kennel aisles while other dogs walk through. You practice. You set up every day as a practice session, as a training session. So
Mm.
ideally, that looks like to me, everybody gets there early in the morning. You've even enlisted some volunteers, perhaps before open hours, you know, before operating hours, and the volunteers know that they are to stand outside the kennels and hand feed everybody to keep them quiet, while and or give them stuffed topples or Kong, some kind of stuffed rubber toy, so that they can lick and chew and be calm, while the staff is in groups of 3 or 5 or 2 or whatever you have, is quickly walking dogs out for their first potty break of the day and then putting them back for the rest of, you know, for their chew. And this is remarkably successful. Even if you only have a team of, you know, let's say 6 to 10 people, this can be done. And within a few weeks, in your existing population, you will see a huge difference. Um, and if any new dogs come in, you will see that, you know, they immediately fall in line. A dog, if the dog knows they're going to get out for a potty break, and they have the physical capacity to hold it, and they've, you know, they will, you know, 9 times out of 10, they're gonna hold it. It's just
Mhm.
when it becomes inconsistent and they don't know that they're ever gonna get out, or they don't, you know that they can't. So it's a weird thing to say, but walking your dogs and cleaning your dogs and having basic level trained volunteers just to
Mm.
do hand feeding and Kong stuffing alone will change the entire dynamic of your shelter.
That sounds good. And things like leash walking, there's no quick way of teaching a dog who lunges
Uh,
and and goes crazy on a leash. How do you manage that?
yeah, that is really the final frontier and the most difficult thing. Um, you know, in a shelter, well, in general, even in pet dogs in a
Yeah,
home, let alone in a shelter.
yeah.
So, and that does take time, and that is something that, you know, is hard to do. So, I honestly, I don't focus on that in the shelters. I will use management equipment to get the dogs from point A to B, and or high level, high value rewards for luring dogs through. So I will have a
Okay.
dog on a short leash on whatever the management equipment is that the shelter uses. I'm not even going to tell the shelter what to use, whether they're using slip leads or harnesses or head halters or collars. they're mainly just to keep the dog safe and near you, and then you're going to lure that dog, on a short leash, not tight leash, although it could become tight, and have food on their nose and march them through as quickly as
Yeah.
possible. Often, if a shelter has like in most do like indoor outdoor runs, with the
Mm.
guillotine door, I will have a situation where the dogs are taken through in order. All right, so if you start at one end of the kennel, let's say everyone is outside and then the walker is on the inside. The first dog is let in, and the first, and taken out and around, and then the second dog, and then they come back in around the outside. You see, so it's a circle. So no one's ever really going past the rest of them, if possible. Again,
Yeah.
every shelter isn't designed the same way, but many of them have doorways at either end and an indoor and an outdoor part. So I say put everybody on one side, and then actively walk dogs through the other side, one at a time or two at
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
time. Do
100%.
you see what I'm saying there? You know, it's just a matter of
Yeah.
logistics and changing up the habits, and then they're seeing other dogs when they walk through, and then when they come back in, they go back, to their outside or whatever it may be. You just have to be creative, and it really is a
Mhm.
case by case basis. But it can be done. I don't, but again, leash walking is something that we will work on when the dog is coming out for training time, and I would say it's better to teach them how to walk politely on a leash on a daily basis in their free time when they're out, rather than
Mm.
have them just playing with another dog. Because my goal is that these dogs get out of the shelter and then get into a lovely home where they stay, and that they get
Definitely.
walked every day when they leave. So another dog is not going to come in
Mhm.
and adopt them. It's going to be a person, and that person is going to be more impressed if the dog has engagement skills, socially engaging, friendly, and maybe has a couple cute tricks, and then perhaps can be walked. At least you're starting the walking training, but of course that's the least of it. Can you get the dog from point A to point B? Can you get them into a meet and greet room or a meet and greet yard? And will they then engage with the person in a friendly and open way, and maybe do a cute trick or a hand touch or a high five or a play bow? And will they play a game with that person? Will they engage instead of if you do a lot of play yard stuff with dogs where they're just at liberty, or with other dogs, they learn to
Mm.
become even more dog centric. And then when you bring them out to a play yard to meet a new person, they're going to look at the fence
Yeah.
line and be looking at other dogs or looking for other dogs and ignoring the stranger in the room. I want them to learn to approach people in a confident and friendly way, no matter who they are, especially if that person maybe
Mm.
is holding the leash or a toy or a
Definitely.
treat. So,
In the places where you actually did open paw, did you ever work out the percentage increasement of people or successful adoptions from when you started to when you finished your open paw?
oh, yeah, I'm so not a numbers person. Yes, there are numbers. You're asking the wrong person for that, though. It was shelter by shelter.
Okay.
They part of the program was keeping numbers and records, and often the program would start with a pilot program, of maybe, and whatever shelter thought that they could, because it's overwhelming to change everything at
Mhm.
once, right? And people have kinks to work out, and they have to work out the system. So often it would either be one kennel block was used as a pilot, or in some cases, one dog or two dogs were used as a pilot program. In other cases, they'd pick 8 or 6 or whatever, and we'd start from there. And they'd have to keep records. We'd like to know, yes, adoption rate, length of stay, um, you know, um, percentage of returns, all of those things. And if you're interested in those numbers, reach out to me separately, and I can get Colleen, my numbers person. We have reports from several shelters, but what I'm most proud of with that is, um, the rate of returns would definitely drop, and the length of stay, or I should say the length of stay would drop. So, like, often the shelter would choose for their pilot program dogs that had been there the longest. In many cases, they'd say, okay, we can't do the whole kennel of dogs right now with Open Paw, but let's pick a couple staff members and volunteers to focus on these again, 3, 4, 6 dogs, whatever. And they would choose the more difficult to adopt dogs, or the ones that had been there for a year already, or whatever it may be. And within a few weeks of the program, these dogs would inevitably get adopted, because now they're showcasing and themselves in a beautiful way, and they're part of a program that is highlighting how to train a dog and how to treat a dog. And so it would usually end up you know finally getting these dogs adopted, because they were getting the skills and the attention that they needed to shine. So it does work, and the numbers can be
That's always
told.
interesting to know the numbers. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Kelly, I think your time is up. You said 20 minutes. I think you late for a class or something.
You have you have one more
One
question?
more.
We can do one more
Okay, let's
question, and
switch
then
to
I can,
puppies.
if you have
I want
more.
to talk puppies. You mind?
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Okay.
Your opinion. You have been dealing with puppies a long, long time. In South Africa, there's still the mentality that puppies should not go to class until they have at least 3 injections and at 6 months. What's your thought on that?
Well, I have my own thoughts for sure, but probably more convincingly, the ASAVB. Oh God, I'm gonna get the acronym wrong. The ASVA, ABA, whatever, the Veterinary Association
Yeah,
of
those
America.
guys.
Yeah, those guys. They have a position statement on this, and it's a bunch of really smart vets that have gotten together and said that it's really important that the early education happens, and that you have to balance their behavioral inoculations
Mm,
with their physical inoculations. They're both really important.
yeah.
You know, so you can, obviously we don't throw caution to the wind and just throw puppies willy-nilly out into the big open parks outside.
Yeah.
But having puppies attend classes that are preferably indoors, because you can sanitize an indoor floor,
Yeah.
on a hard surface,
Yeah.
um, and having them interact safely with other vaccinated puppies, in this same indoor space, as long as everyone is appearing healthy. You can do a health check with every puppy as they come in. If they don't look lethargic or dull coated, or have any, fluids running from their eyes or noses, and they're not coughing, and they look robust, and they have their vaccine records, well, then you're pretty safe. And then if you'd like, and you want to be even more cautious, you can have people take their shoes off outside of the classroom, or wear those little booties that people wear at hospitals and such, if you really want to. Tiny bits of exposure. We can't avoid exposure.
Yeah.
I also have the pleasure of, through Open Paw and through just living in the Bay Area, I've had a lot of access to the UC Davis, which is the University of California Davis Medical Veterinary Shelter Medicine Program. It was the first of its kind. It still might be the only one. They've been up and running now for 25 years, and they launched at the same time Open Paw did. So we did a lot of shelter management for behavioral and physical health. Like they were tasked with figuring this out. Like, how do you do both?
Okay.
And I've talked to, I've had access to this group of infectious disease experts for the past 25 years. And I've asked them a lot of questions over the years, and not just about shelter dogs, but about puppy class, because I run one of the biggest puppy classes schools in the world, really.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure the puppies are safe. Obviously, we don't want any disease outbreaks or illness or God forbid, death. And so, I also foster puppies a lot, so I have questions about my own environment. I mean, even neonates and very young puppies have come into my environment frequently, my home and my yard. And once I had a litter of puppies, for instance, that actually turns out had parvo. I didn't know when I took them in.
Sure.
And I was devastated. I mean, we were able to keep the puppies alive and get them over this. And, it does, they ended up fine. But I was like, these puppies have been in my yard. And I am a puppy person. I work at a puppy school. I have puppies all the time. Can they never come into my yard again? Oh my, I was devastated.
Shame.
Devastated.
Sure.
Oh yeah. And so I called one of these lovely infectious disease experts, and she said, no. She said, parvovirus is everywhere. You're never going to completely keep your puppies safe unless you keep them hermetically sealed, because it will come in on your shoes, it will come in on your heads. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's very, very virulent and and strong. She said tiny, 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 tiny inoculations, which are happening no matter what you do, are good for the puppy, especially if they're already vaccinated and you're keeping up with their vaccines. Um, and keep things sanitized, get your vaccines, keep them updated, and then don't worry. And I've taken that to heart. So the little the puppies coming out, they need exposure to dirt,
Yeah.
sticks, people, noise. I mean physically for their physical health, they need access. They need to be able to chew on sticks and walk in dirt and meet people and go out. You can also wipe puppy paws. If I do take puppies out somewhere where I think there's any kind of risk, I will just take a little wipe afterwards, just like us with infectious disease. You wiping,
Yeah.
is actually quite effective. And you really, if you look at how many dogs are in the shelter, in most, not all environments, in all, different cities, towns, countries, whatever, not all. Most dogs, at least in the Western world, are dying in shelters of behavior problems, meaning their time is up and they're euthanized, or
Yeah.
they've gone crazy in the kennel, or they're just unadoptable now in a gray kind of way.
Yeah.
And it's behavior that kills dogs in shelters. It's not parvo in greater numbers.
Yeah.
So balance out your puppy. You never get that time back. It'd be like saying you're not going to send your child to kindergarten or
Yeah.
preschool because they might get sick.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
It's silly.
It's a calculated risk.
Yeah.
You're safe as you can be, and you pick up your puppy. You don't walk your puppy into the veterinary office, for instance. There's a million sick dogs at the vet. You pick up your puppy, you don't put them down until you're in a room that you see has been washed around the table, or you put out a blanket. Often I use tarps and picnic blankets to put
Yeah.
puppies out in a park.
Yeah. Yeah.
I take them out and we do things, and we
Yeah.
keep them, as healthy as we can.
Yeah, that keeps them out of the shelters in the end, at the end of the day.
It does. They need exposure. The damage that's done. I mean, we have also seen it with the shutdowns during the pandemic, right? Like human children, let alone dogs, really suffered from not having exposure.
Yeah.
They don't get to create the neural pathways and the experiences that they need to be healthy and well-rounded. And so, again, I wouldn't go to a dog park.
No,
I
definitely
wouldn't
not.
walk my
No.
dog through. I wouldn't go to a dog park. I wouldn't go to maybe certain areas of town if there's a population that is under vaccinated, maybe due to income disparity. I wouldn't go to a veterinary office. But you can also do a lot of safe socialization by having your puppy in your arms, in a wagon, in a stroller, in a backpack, in a little sack, in a car.
Yeah.
And then indoor puppy classes with a sanitized floor is a very, very, very safe place to take a puppy.
Yeah, or a place where no other dogs normally allowed, like a school hall or something.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, schools, banks, hardware stores. Most people, if you have your puppy in a little bag, or you're carrying them in your arms, they're going to be allowed to go into most places. And car socialization for noise and scent
Yeah.
exposure. I go to like a big box hardware store or home improvement store, and we park outside and we open up the hatchback and sit with the puppy and hand feed them, or put them in a cart. With a towel on the bottom, right, so they can ride through a store. Feed stores. We do that all the time. They get out to see things and see the world and smell things and meet people without having to. You can keep these visits, these field trips short, so that you potty your puppy before you leave. You only go out for an hour. They can't stay up very long anyway, the puppies. And then you come home and they potty and they go take a nap. Or,
Yeah.
I find places to toilet them that are not dog centric, like planters. Almost every business has some kind of sort of landscaping that you can kind of stick your pup into the middle of, where that isn't right on the sidewalk. Or that's one of my tricks. And
Yeah.
just let them pee, because most puppies will pee also, if you've been holding them up in your arms, or they've been contained in a container, or a bag or a crate. You put them out, they're going to potty almost immediately.
Yeah.
So they're empty. It's
The
just being
puppies will
smart
be
about it.
puppies.
But I've even taken my puppies. Oh yeah, I've taken my puppies to even questionable parks. I would go to this one park here in California that it's pretty gross. Let's just say it really is. But it's where a group of people would meet to do some French spring sport obedience training on the regular. And I thought, well, I can't leave the puppies. They're going to be gone too long,
Mm.
first of all. And secondly, they have so many dog-centric people there that can hold them and meet them, and they can hear the noises of the training. It'll be great for them.
Yeah.
Again, I just put out a picnic blanket, and then I put out a doggy toilet in there,
Mm.
like a little fake piece of grass or sod,
Yeah.
and in a pen.
Mm. Mm.
And then the puppy is not touching the ground, but is completely exposed to the park.
Yeah, they're happy.
You can do that kind of stuff. It doesn't take long, and it's worth it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. So get out there safely. I'm not saying be cavalier, but it is equally important to getting them their medical vaccines. The behavior inoculations are essential to a well-rounded, healthy puppy.
Definitely.
So there you go.
No, thank you, Kelly. That was a lot of information. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And maybe we can
Sure.
talk
I'm
again
so
at
happy
another
to chat
stage.
anytime.
Thank you, Kelly. Enjoy your class.
Anytime. Happy to chat. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Talk
Thank
soon. Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.